At the tip of the Malay Peninsula, there is an island that is practically invisible on the world map. But in just a few short decades, it transformed from a developing nation into a global powerhouse. Welcome to Singapore. This is a country that defied the odds to become one of the shining examples of success in Asia and the world.
This was a mudflat, swamp. Today, this is a modern city. 10 years from now, this will be a metropolis.
Today, we're going to explore the journey of Singapore's rise from modest beginnings to its current status as a thriving metropolis. We'll look at the key moments from its early days under British colonial rule through the brief merger with Malaysia to its unexpected yet triumphant independence. Stick around till the end as we compare Singapore and Malaysia, two siblings with a shared heritage that ended up having very different futures. How did this small island not just survive, but thrive against all odds? What lessons can we learn from its transformation that are still important and relevant today? Let's find out. The story kicks off in the mid-20th century, when the British granted independence to Malaya in 1957. This new beginning was a sign of hope for many. During this time, Singapore was dealing with some serious problems. The city centre was overcrowded, buildings were falling into disrepair, most of the population lived in slums, unemployment rates were in the double digits. It didn't look like the nation had much hope. The economy was failing and poverty was skyrocketing. It was clear the government needed to fix the economy, and fast. Fast forward to 1963, and the plot thickens as Singapore, Malaya, Sabah, and Sarawak were merged to form the Federation of Malaysia. Sadly, this was far from a happy union. The merger was a marriage of convenience, with its fair share of disputes, disagreements, and economic challenges. It was a relationship where all the partners involved had very different visions for their future. Singapore, with its predominantly Chinese population, found itself at odds with the federal policies favoring ethnic Malays. Singapore believed that this approach was a recipe for disaster, and soon enough, something had to give. Then came the twist that no one saw coming: the separation.
The Prime Minister of Malaysia, Tunku Abdul Rahman Putra Al-Haj, did proclaim and declare that Singapore shall, on the 9th day of August in the year 1965, cease to be a state of Malaysia and shall become an independent and sovereign state and nation, separate from and independent of Malaysia.
Depending on who you ask, what happened is different. Some say Malaysia gave Singapore the cold shoulder, showing it the door to try and win the favor of the remaining states. Others claim Singapore decided to go out alone for independence. It was like a typical messy breakup. You know the kind we're talking about. Both people claimed they were the ones who ended things. It's not you, it's me. I couldn't stand living with him anymore. He snored so loudly, I haven't slept since we were married. Yeah, what a cliche. Yet, they're both as guilty as each other. But, unlike most breakups, this one had a silver lining, leading to the creation of Singapore as a sovereign nation on August 9th, 1965. This moment was Singapore's leap of faith, stepping onto the world stage with little more than its strategic location and a resilient spirit. The island was suddenly a solo act, without natural resources, facing the challenging task of trying to survive economically and maintain social stability. The small island looked at the hand it was dealt and decided to play its cards with unmatched skill. Singapore wasn't just trying to finish this race, it was determined to win. One of the main reasons for the nation's success was its government. The People's Action Party, or PAP, took control of the newly independent state, with Kuan Yew appointed as the first Prime Minister. Some say Lee governed with an iron fist inside a velvet glove.
I gave them a choice. Continue this, and I will, by every means at my disposal, teach you and get the people of Singapore, help me teach you a lesson you won't forget. And I'm prepared to start all over again.
He had a plan that would turn a small port city into a global economic titan. His approach? First things first, fix the basics. This included working conditions, education, and public housing. He didn't just want to put roofs over heads. Lee wanted to lay the foundations for a modern and thriving society. But Lee didn't stop there. Soon, Singapore shifted gears, welcoming the world with open arms. "Come invest," they said, and many came. Why? Because Singapore was rolling out the red carpet in a way that hardly anybody else could match. Transparency, accountability, and minimal bureaucracy made it a heaven for businesses. This was a sleek, well-oiled machine that made doing business not just easy, but enticing. And while Singapore welcomed foreign investment, it wasn't giving away the shop. The island kept its eyes on the prize: economic growth. Yes, but also racial and religious harmony. A secular approach meant religion and politics didn't mix. Everyone could have their beliefs without them spilling into the streets or the seats of power. This move kept the nation's social fabric intact, even as the economy boomed. At the same time, Singapore's own attitude helped it to succeed. It had an outward-looking, export-driven focus that was very different from the nations around it. While some countries looked inward, Singapore looked out across the oceans and saw opportunity. The port of Singapore became the world's second largest by volume, after Shanghai, and a leader in transshipments. Singapore was standing on the diving board of Asia, ready to leap into the global pool of trade and investment. But they also had another ace up their sleeve. Kuan Yew and his team knew that a skilled workforce was the engine of growth. They poured funds into the education system, creating one of the most educated workforces in the world. Think about it. A tiny island with limited natural resources transforming into a world-class economy on the back of its human capital. They really were big dreamers back in the 60s. While Singapore was soaring ahead, its neighbor, Malaysia, faced a different set of challenges. The Malaysian government was formed by numerous political parties, such as UMNO, MCA, and MIC, each with its own view of how to proceed. UMNO was the dominant party. Their focus was primarily on Malay political dominance and economic power. This domestic approach sometimes struggled with issues of national unity and established privileges. Malaysia's larger landmass and diverse states, unlike Singapore's compact and manageable island, presented a greater challenge. Policies initially favored import substitution to strengthen homegrown industries, but later transitions to export-oriented development became difficult. The traditional practices in the country were an obstacle to this transition. Malaysia's interests didn't always align with economic strength. There's also the question of racial harmony. The Singaporean government made this idea a key part of its policies. Picture public housing estates as miniature models of the nation's approach to ethnic harmony, with strict ethnic quotas per apartment building. This ensured that no race was isolated from others. The government didn't leave anything to chance. It was policy and practice in every apartment building. Students, the nation's future, learned side by side, regardless of their background. The message was clear. Unity starts young. English became a bridge connecting the island to the world and, more importantly, to each other. The language was a tool for economic power. But they didn't sideline the other languages. Singaporeans celebrated the mother tongues of Mandarin, Malay, and Tamil too. However, across the waters, Malaysia's approach struck a different chord. The Bumiputera led to debates that certain ethnicities were getting better treatment. While they were still trying to help the native population, many people criticized the policies for not promoting racial harmony across its diverse population. And then there are the festivals. In Singapore, the calendar is an inclusive celebration. A major festival from any creed is a holiday for all, including Christmas, Hari Raya, Vesak Day, and Deepavali. Sure, it got people days off, but it was also so much more than that. It was a clear recognition that every culture was a vital part of the nation's heart and soul. Resource-wise, Singapore's lack of natural wealth turned out to be its greatest advantage. Where others may have seen scarcity, Singapore saw a blank slate. Instead of resources, knowledge and innovation would be the nation's gold mines. The country poured its energy into creating a knowledge-based economy and attracting industries that would turn intellectual capital into economic success. In contrast, Malaysia was blessed with an abundance of natural resources. However, this was a double-edged sword, which led to a different kind of challenge. The riches beneath the soil and the wealth of the forests had the potential to overshadow the growth of other sectors. This created a classic case of resource diplomacy where the state put far too many eggs in one basket. So, what about today? Well, the Singaporean passport is like a golden key to the world. In 2019, 2021, and once again in 2023, the Henley Passport Index ranked it as the most powerful passport in the world. With this mighty booklet in hand, Singaporeans could go to a record number of countries visa-free. For 7 consecutive years, between 2012 and 2018, the World Bank declared the nation the best place in the world for doing business. Innovation? Oh, Singapore's got plenty of that. The 2021 Bloomberg Innovation Index ranked Singapore second among global innovators. And cleanliness? Sure, there's no awards for this one, but many people have said it's one of the cleanest countries in the world. The streets are so spotless you could almost eat off them. Safety is important for any country, and Singapore excels here too. Crime rates are consistently at record low levels. Teenage girls can roam the streets with friends past midnight while their parents sleep soundly in their beds, knowing they'll be having breakfast together the next morning. Now, let's talk dollars and cents. Sure, the cost of living between Singapore and Malaysia is quite different. Yes, Singapore might have a reputation for being pricey, but it also has the earning power to match. Across the straits in Malaysia, the picture is very different. Despite lower salaries, many Malaysians face higher costs for essentials like food. For many people, the high cost of living means having to balance affordability with necessity. For example, the minimum wage in Malaysia is around $316 American, but in Singapore, although there's no minimum wage, the average low-income salary is equivalent to $1,303 American. The average salary for Malaysians is about $549 American, while it's about $3,776 American for Singaporeans. It's quite the difference. While the story of Singapore's success is far from over, its legacy is already in the history books. The nation turned scarcity into opportunity, challenges into advantages, and dreams into reality. It seems that leadership and vision could be more critical to the development of a country, as compared to the natural resources and geographical advantages that give many countries a head start. Singapore might have been a tiny resourceless island, but it survived the impossible.